So far, training for Ontario Time Attack is going quite well, but there are still a few modifications to the car that need to be made. So this week, Jay and I install some new suspension, and then I take a very yellow Honda out for some autocross for a crash course in car handling.
These are Coilovers. This is the HSD MonoPro kit, and the main reason that I got these is because it has a camber plate installed. Now, I looked at the actual price of getting camber plates for my Kona Yellows, and for the price that they were going to cost, it made more sense to just get an entire HSD coilover kit, because for what you get, these are a really, really good price. Every HSD kit comes with everything you need front and back, full adjustability for the damper and the ride height. So we're back at the JRP garage, and I'm excited to get these in the car so we can get back on the track and see what they can do.
Of course, before we could install the HSDs, we had to remove the old coilovers. My colleague Jay had something to say about the install job that I did last summer.
So Thomas, did you put these coilovers in?
Yes, I did.
And this is supposed to happen?
It's supposed to be like that. So this Kona Yellow shock didn't fit with the ground control coilover, so I had to mill this piece out. It's fine, trust me.
You don't say.
I was on a budget. Actually, I still am on a budget. If I'd known the HSDs were around in the first place, I probably wouldn't have done something like this. But yeah, so
wow.
Let's take these off.
We started by removing the sway bar end link from the shock body, but Jay was not yet done complaining about my previous install.
So it's not even street legal, your install
Yes,
there?
it is.
You sure?
I called ground control and they told me that it was okay.
Wow.
Lefty loosey. Righty tighty.
Next, I removed the single pinch bolt holding the steering knuckle to the shock. I suggest spraying some penetrant on this because the first time I removed this bolt, I broke it. Next, I forced Jay to do the grueling task of holding up the control arm, steering knuckle, and brake as it dropped away from the shock. Then I could remove the upper bolts on top of the strut, and the whole strut comes out.
Still admiring your work.
I know.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Like that?
The shards of aluminum here looks just fantastic.
Since Jay couldn't stop whining about my install, I took my time removing a stuck socket while he held up the control arm.
You okay there, Jay?
No, not really. It's kind of heavy.
No big deal. Got it.
Don't lose that. Oh my god, that's nice and light.
Yep. Okay.
The next thing we did was set up the new coilover. If you don't know what you are doing here, this is the step where you might need some help. On the HSD, or any coilover for that matter, you need to preload the spring. You don't want the spring to be able to move around because you may get some noise over bumps and you want some force pushing down on the wheels. Several turns of the lower adjustment collar should do it, and then you need to lock the spring adjustment collar with a second ring. The HSD MonoPro is a large valve monotube damper with 16 clicks of adjustable damping, but the selling point for me was that you also get a camber plate, and my E46 was badly in need of some front negative camber. So I preset the camber plate to be as negative as possible before I installed it back in the car. Installation is the reverse of removal and is fairly straightforward. You will need a proper setup before you take it to the track, so what I did was just set the ride height as close to my previous setup as possible. I used a strut tower reinforcement plate and made sure I torqued the strut tower bolts carefully. And before I drove the car, I made sure all the locking collars were tight by hitting the adjustment tool with a hammer.
Alright, now it's easy if you have a friend to hold up the steering knuckle for you when you actually tighten up the steering knuckle bolt because it's very heavy and it's difficult to move around. Once you have this in, tighten that bolt up to spec, and then when you actually lower the car, it might adjust a little bit, so you might want to torque it when it's actually on the ground if possible. Now, we have to get this down and get it to an alignment shop right away, otherwise who knows what's actually going to be going on. Don't just put random coilovers like this in your car and then go take it to the track. That would be a bad idea. So it's actually a good idea if you take it to a shop to have them install it with an alignment rack and they do the whole thing all at once.
Now the rears are even easier. Remove the carpeting from the back of the car and immediately throw it away because race car. Then you remove the two nuts holding the strut mount on the top and remove the lower two bolts on each strut. The strut will now fall away. Then you remove the old spring by pulling down on the control arm. Then bolt on the HSD ride height adjustment collar. I used the rubber OEM spring mount underneath it. Then you simply pull down on the control arm and pop in the new spring. Okay, you have someone else pull down on the control arm and then you install the new spring. The damper install, again, is the reverse of removal. I used a reinforcement plate to strengthen the attachment point in the chassis. Then you need to jack up the control arm a bit to put some preload on the spring. Adjust the length of the damper so that the maximum droop travel doesn't exceed the travel of the spring. This is another one of those things that it's a good idea to have someone who knows what they're doing set it up properly. That's what I did. So with the HSDs installed, I couldn't wait to get back out and do some more training. So I went to the first driving event that came up, and my car was looking better than ever. And maybe a bit more yellow.
Hello, I am in a very tail-happy Honda S2000. The main reason for that is that my car is currently in the shop because I installed those HSD coilovers and now I'm getting a quick alignment at burning rubber tire and speed. So here we are at a Push It to the Limit Autocross series because Autocross is a fantastic way to teach yourself about car control, especially if you are in an S2000 like this one.
The Honda S2000 is a front mid-engined car, which means that the bulk of the engine's weight is behind the front struts. This greatly improves the handling. At the time of release, the piston speeds in a Honda S2000 were higher than that of the F1 cars of the same period. No 2 years of S2000s handled the same, and this particular one has a rear roll bar, which stiffened up the rear of the chassis. This causes it to easily slide the rear end around in tight corners, so I was eager to get it out on the autocross course to see what it was capable of.
Alright, here we go. Said I'm not going to be able to talk much. Oh, she's quick. God, this thing turns in. Unbelievable.
Autocross is all about head game. I did my best to look as far ahead as I could, like Colin taught me, and I tried to stay smooth at the throttle and steering. This was a tense run. In autocross, every tenth of a second counts, and I really wanted to prove to myself that I had the skills to handle a car like this at the limit, and that I could stay clear-headed enough to hit the next gate with no mistakes. So I pushed as hard as I could, without sacrificing the foundations that I was taught.
Heart's beating. Autocross gets the heart racing, it really does. You're doing so much. It's so good for steering wheel position, hand position, car control, everything. You saw how active I was, and I was trying to be smooth. I shall park the lovely S2000. By the way, these cars are amazing.
The S2000 was an epic car for tight auto slalom. It just carved through the tight stuff effortlessly. I focused on maintaining proper hand position and not shuffling the wheel because the instincts and skills you build in autocross will help you out on the big tracks. Driving a car like this one every once in a while is good because it helps you build the skills necessary to handle a car that likes to dance around a bit. The last thing you want is for the tail end to get away from you and not know how to recover it. So I was happy to have the chance to practice sliding this S2000 around a bit. By the end of the day, and after about 6 runs, I set a respectable time, but the car's owner, Kevin Wong, who was nice enough to let me co-drive, bested me in our class. While I may have been autocrossing, my mind was on Time Attack. The first Ontario Time Attack event at Toronto Motorsports Park was at the back of my mind, and I was worried about many things. How was I going to perform? Was the car ready? What if something goes wrong? There are so many factors at play, but I have good quality parts and solid instruction on my side, so I was feeling confident. Little did I know that things at the first event would go very, very wrong. On the next episode of Road to Time Attack.